Wherever we may be located, I pay my respects to elders past and present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples with us today. Hello everyone, my name is Vicky Worland. I'm a teacher, I'm a mum of 3 and co-founder of Gotcha for Life. I'm passionate about building healthy connections and creating safe spaces to have honest conversations. Through my work and my own family, I've seen how powerful it is to support one another through life's transitions. Part of Gotcha for Life is about building mental fitness. Building our mental fitness is around how we are able to cope with life's ups and downs, and we're going to look at a few of those today. Gotcha for Life's approach with mental fitness is to cultivate 3 evidence-based protective factors. And through this brilliant conversation today, we're going to have a look at some of those, where we're looking at emotional adaptability, social connectedness, and help-seeking behaviour. Most of you, I think, who are joining this evening have been part of the wonderful whole-of-school approach within our primary schools. And I'm hoping that the teachers and parents that are on board have seen that what we're really trying to navigate here is how the vital role that parents and carers have in these communities to make sure that we can help set the stage for our young people. And helping me to do that this evening is Dr. Justin Coulson, a proud father of 6 and a grandfather.
I can be profound as well if you want.
Yeah, proud and profound, whose family is at the heart of the work that he does. Dr. Justin is a leading voice in parenting with a PhD in positive psychology. He's written 9 books and the roles of a co-host of Parental Guidance and the #1 parenting podcast in Australia. His insights are rooted in both personal experiences and years of professional research, making him an incredible guide through the challenges of parenthood. Today, we are here to provide you with guidance and practical tools to help you and your family navigate change. Whether it's big or small, we hope that the session leaves you feeling prepared and connected as you support yourself and the children through all life's ups and downs. So, we're going to jump straight in. I would love you, Dr. Justin, you also introduce yourself. I met you for the first time not so long ago, and it is hard to know where to follow on when you hear of the things that you've done. Firstly, 6 children, grandchildren. I think I'm correct in saying that they're all girls. So I'd love you just to introduce yourself from you and let everyone know a little bit about you.
Sure. I'll make it quick because I want not to very much be about our audience and not me. A couple of things that are probably relevant. The first is that I never meant to do what I'm doing today. I was a terrible student. I hated school. I was absolutely hopeless at it, and thought that I was pretty stupid. Thought I was quite just literally and genuinely unintelligent. What I was instead, though, was fairly uninspired by academic learning. And I wanted to be a radio announcer. I was motivated by other things. I wanted to be with my friends. I wanted to surf, catch waves, and I wanted to be on the radio. Radio announcers
appeared. Hear a single thing. I'm just wondering when you were on the Zoom last.
Shay might get you to just pop yourself onto mute. She can't hear. There we go. Somebody else has done it for us. There we go. She just said she can't hear anything, and yet I'm telling her to go on mute. See, there I am. I didn't think I was very intelligent. I've just demonstrated it.
Not at all.
And so I wanted to be a radio announcer, and anyone who's listened to the radio knows that those guys didn't have to do well at school. Please apologise to Gus for that comment.
Oh, well, luckily he's not here to hear that.
That's right. And so I had a successful radio career, but while I was going through my mid-20s, I was married, we'd had our first couple of kids, and I just discovered, honestly, that I was a bit of a disaster as a father. And the main reason, as much as I hate to admit it, was because I did not know how to regulate my behavior, specifically my emotions. And if I'm being really frank, I had I don't know if I had anger issues or entitlement issues. Maybe it was a combination of the two. And when I had a 3-year-old who didn't want to obey me, I just got really angry. I behaved like a toddler. And over a short period of time, I discovered that what I was doing was ruining my family, ruining my marriage, and potentially ruining my life. And so I quit my radio career. I went back to school, and for the next 8.5 years, because I wasn't willing to go and do therapy, I wasn't going to go and do some inner work on myself. I just wanted to understand what was going on. I did a psychology degree, followed by a PhD, became a university lecturer, And after a couple of years of university lecturing, I left that and started to give talks and write books and share the insights and learnings that I'd had as I'd done my studies and done my research, both academically and professionally, with others. And that became the most fulfilling and delightful and wonderful thing that I could have ever imagined doing with my life. And so for the last 15, 16 years, maybe more now, I've been full-time, traveling around the country and giving talks and doing everything that I can to help other people to have better relationships and to understand their psychology and the psychology of the people that they love the most.
Yeah, beautiful. And that really leads us straight into this amazing space where I think tonight for the parents, teachers and carers are on board can hear from you what we call those transitional moments that for our youngsters, we may see them one way and they see them very much another. So I'd love you to start off by sharing with us what you believe some of those tricky transitional spaces are for not only us as parents to navigate, but to be aware of that our children are potentially navigating those as well.
Okay, so I think first off, we need a definition of a transition, and that's when you move from one space to another, from one period or one plateau, one period of consistency to another. That is, we're transitioning from not being at school to being at school, or let's pick an even more traumatic transition. We're transitioning from being an intact family to a separated family, or we can push even further into harder things. We're transitioning from oh no, let's just leave it there for now. We can tackle some of the other hard things a little bit later. But I guess the main thing that I would emphasize, Vicky, is that life happens in the transitions. Quite often when people are going through transitions, we sort of throw up our hands and say, oh my goodness, too hard. Can't wait till we're through this transition so we can get on with our life. But it's actually the transitioning that propels us into the next phase of our life. If we didn't have transitions, we wouldn't progress, we wouldn't grow, we wouldn't develop. There wouldn't be any additional life, if that makes sense. We require the transitions for progress, for growth, for development, for enhancing the lives that we lead. If we didn't transition, we would remain stagnant, and there is no life in stagnation. So in terms of key transition periods in kids' lives,
Yeah.
the central one that I would probably pick on is just beginning school for the first time. That's a massive one. Kids go from, or even before then, transitioning from being in the permanent care of a parent or parents into some sort of daycare or something like that. Once you've gone there, then you start to have transitions like going through the different grades. There'll be friendship transitions. Those friendship changes can occur if your parents move house and there's a school change. That's going to be a big transition. A major transition happens from grade 6 to grade 7 as you move from primary school to high school, unless of course you're in a school where that transition is smooth because you're kind of a K to 12 or a P to 12 school or whatever it might be. But these tend to be the big ones. And the other major transitions that I would talk to families about would be the transitions that happen at personal junctures, like family changes, families splitting up, or families uniting in new ways, coming together, maybe blending families, and the transitions that involve loss. Or sometimes the birth of a new child into a family can be a major transition, but the transitions involving loss are also going to be the major transitions.
Beautiful. So when at Got You for Life, we talk about building mental fitness, we look at that emotional adaptability, we look at that help-seeking behavior, and we're looking at that social connectedness. So what out of, if we were looking at from that perspective, what are some of those sort of behavioral changes? Whether, you know, would we be looking for more emotional changes? Would it be that connection, you know, lack of conversation? What sort of behavioral things would we potentially be looking for?
Okay, so I mean, in an ideal world, let's talk about why transitions work or don't work first of all, and then that will segue really nicely into the behaviors to look out for. So when a transition occurs, if it's going to happen in a healthy way, it's going to be because your child is appropriately and adequately prepared. So they feel competent and capable. If a child feels that they can be effective in their new sphere, then they're going to approach that transition with eagerness and enthusiasm. There might be a little bit of hesitancy just because it's novel and new, but they're going to look at this and say, okay, I think I can do this. I feel like I can be competent and capable by doing this. And what makes them feel most competent and capable are two other things. Number one, having relationships. So the transition from one grade to another, from one school to another, from no school to big school, from A to B, whatever that transition is, if they have people that love them on the other side of the transition, then they will transition usually fairly enthusiastically. They're looking forward to seeing 3 of their best friends at the new school. They're looking forward to seeing that one really close person from kindergarten once they move into big school. They're looking to, like there's that continuity of relationship, or that maybe they just know the teacher and they're looking forward to spending time with that teacher because their big brother had them a few years ago. But this sense of continuity, this sense of relationship, that will enhance a sense of competence and a longing or a looking forward to it. And that will lead to positive adaptation, positive coping. Similarly, if there's a sense of choice that they have, that is, if they, choice is probably too strong a word. It doesn't even have to be choice. It's not like they're choosing to go to a certain school. It might not be choice at all, but they're doing it volitionally. That is, they understand the need for it and they're willing to step into it. In the same way that when we get on the road and drive home after a meeting or after a day at work, we volitionally drive on the left. Like, we don't sit there and go, you know what, today I'm going to drive on the left-hand side. That's my choice. We don't consciously choose it, but we understand the rationale for it, so we do that. So when there's high levels of choice, when we feel confident, when our relationship is good, the transition will usually go really well. The adaptation and the coping will be high. If those things aren't present, that is, if I'm not choosing it, I don't know anyone, I don't feel like I can be effective, I'm typically not going to approach it with enthusiasm. It's going to feel like it's too much. It's going to be overwhelming. And depending on your child's capacity for doing things that they're not familiar with, it may push them above and beyond what's normal. And if that is the case, you're going to usually see negative and challenging behaviors. Often children, it's pretty rare, depending on your child, their maturity and their communication skills and their regulatory capacity. It's pretty rare for a child to look at you and say, you know what, Mum, got a big thing happening in 3 or 4 weeks and I'm anxious about it. I'm having butterflies in my tummy. I've got some stress on my neck and shoulders. And I feel like every time anyone brings it up, I want to react in a pretty big way. And I'm doing my best to hold it together, but I just wanted to let you know, like, 6-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 11-year-olds don't say those things. What they do instead is they tell everyone that they hate them, or they stop eating, or they just stare at a screen and withdraw to their room, or they start to pick on their sister, or they say, no, I don't want to, when we ask them to do things that normally they'd be willing to involve themselves in. Or, no, they stop sleeping, or maybe they don't want to get out of bed at all. These are the kinds of things that we typically see with a kid as the anxiety rate rises because they don't have the adaptive mechanisms, the coping mechanisms to respond with enthusiasm to an upcoming challenge.
Yeah, and look, I love that. And I think most of us here would absolutely relate to a lot of that. I have older children now, and I look, as you're saying that, I look back and think, wow, I definitely saw that. And I think probably a lot of people in the room now are thinking as well, we see that. And so how do we lean into that situation without it, like you say, because sometimes they don't have the words and they don't know, depending on where they are and the age that they are. They haven't got that. But equally, so what advice would you give us to even potentially start a conversation with them? You notice the behavior change. It might be even a behavior that is frustrating, that does then cause a reaction from a parent as well.
Right.
How do we, because it's not going to be perfect. And often we will say things like, you're going to be fine, when actually, so we've been quite dismissive in the way we've spoken to them potentially. So it would be great to get, a couple of things that you have found that work that maybe will help the audience to sort of say, yes, I've seen that, or, oh my God, I did do that, but I tried to fix it, or I ignored it, or just told them to get on with it. What sort of advice would you give us with that in the communication part of that connection? How do we talk to some of this?
So we haven't prepped this. You don't know this is coming, but I want to throw you in the hot seat for a sec, if that's okay.
Look out.
I'm not going to ask you to think of a transition time that you've been through. That might be a little bit of a, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I just want you to think of a time when you were a bit anxious, a bit nervous, a bit overexcited, a little bit worried about something. There was a change, there was a requirement, there was a situation where you had to do something that was above and beyond what's normal for you. At that point, what did you want? Let's say Gus has walked into the kitchen and he's seen you and you're looking a bit frazzled, you're clearly anxious. What did you want from him? What was the one thing that would have made the biggest difference for you?
Oh, wow. I think asking questions, but a question that isn't like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, yeah.
it's more around, I suppose, coming with an open-ended, like, I can see that you don't see yourself.
Well,
There's
hang on,
that.
stop. I want you
Oh,
to stop right there, because what you've just told me is very different to what you said you wanted. You said, I want a
yeah,
question, but you then gave me a statement, not a question. And the statement was, I can see that you're not yourself, or I can see that you're a bit frazzled, or it looks like you're a bit anxious at the moment. Are things a bit stressful
yeah,
for you? So what you've highlighted is that you're looking for somebody to literally validate or acknowledge or recognize where you are emotionally.
yeah,
And what's extraordinary about this is there's a thing that I talk about when I'm talking to teachers, parents, CEOs, executives, it doesn't matter who it is, same principle all the time. And that is that there's a relationship between how emotional you are and how intelligent you are. The more emotional you are, I'm going to say this really rudely, the more stupid you are. And you can probably think of times where that's happened, right? I mean, all you've got to do is get onto news.com.au and watch what dash cam owners are filming on the street. Somebody gets really emotional because something doesn't go very well,
yeah,
and all rationality leaves, and suddenly they're getting out of vehicles and throwing fists at people. Like, that's not normal, that's not rational. But when you're really emotional, when you feel like your life is being threatened, that's how you respond. And that's what our kids are doing, right? They're emotional because they're anxious, they're worried about this transition, and they stop thinking with their neocortex, with their prefrontal cortex, and they start thinking with their emotional brain, which is all the way back here, down here. And we need to get them back up here. The thing is, when you start, well, let me ask you this, and I don't want to get too deep into your relationship with Gus, Vix, but
yeah.
but I'm going to ask the question and I'll let you decide how far you go with this. Has Gus ever tried to give you advice when you've been really emotional? Has he ever sat you down and said,
Oh, yeah,
Vix,
yeah.
yeah,
It's like,
and
yeah,
when he gets really logical with you and you're still in your emotional brain, have you ever looked at him and said, Gus, this is why I married you. You're so wise. I appreciate you so much.
no, probably not what comes out of my mouth. But yeah, I get what you're saying. It's when you're in that emotional state, you want support,
Yes.
but it's how you ask how the other person gives that support. So when we're dealing with
Right.
even younger,
Yeah.
how do we really simplify that to be able, as
Okay.
parents, to say, right, we can see that they're losing it, but equally the parent could be too. So let's say one of the transitions you said is around that they want to feel that like they belong. And I know, looking back at mine, one of my children, no, she literally didn't have the same friend, like close friend she had, finished the year, would go back the following year, and that close friend wasn't ever in her classroom. So
Yeah.
coming back, she was emotional about that. And that equally, I could be emotional and cranky. And being a teacher myself, I probably took the you'll be fine. But so how do we simplify it? Because there is emotion there. There's probably emotion
Yeah.
for the parent. So how do
Yeah.
we navigate that so it gives the opportunity to hold that space both ways, I suppose.
Okay. So you'll be fine is getting logical. It's trying to convince somebody of something that their brain is telling them can't possibly be true. So we need to reverse engineer this. And as you said, if Gus sees you in the kitchen, what you really want is that validation. But I want to go back a couple of steps even before that. If I'm a parent and I'm dealing with an anxious child, or if I'm a teacher and I'm dealing with a really anxious child, the first thing that I want to do, and my goodness, this is the hardest thing, is that I've got to regulate myself. Like,
Yeah.
I've got to actually pause and acknowledge in my own mind the child. I'm not dealing with a difficult child. I'm dealing with a child who's having a difficult time.
Okay. I
And if
love
I
that.
can just make that shift, the kiddo is not the problem. The kiddo is having a problem. And that can help me to be much more compassionate in my approach, which means that I'm far more likely to say the right thing rather than saying, you'll be fine, stop being silly. use your words, rather than saying that and getting logical when they're not in their logical brain, they're in their emotional brain. I need to regulate myself. That's step one. Step two, and this is the trick. I've got to make my eyes soft. So for everyone who's watching right now, I want you to do a little experiment, and you can do this with me as well, Vix. I want you to think really mean thoughts about somebody with soft eyes. Okay, so make your eyes as soft as you possibly can and think really horrible things about someone.
It's quite hard.
Right. So let me make it easier. I'll give you some people to think horrible things about. If you're a left-leaning political follower, I want you to think about Pauline Hanson, or I want you to think about Donald Trump, okay? And think all the horrible things, but make your eyes soft as you think about him. And if you're on the other side of the political spectrum, if you're a strong right-wing person politically, I want you to think of, I don't know, think of Adam Bandt from the Greens, or think of Kamala Harris, or whoever. Yeah. Like, think of your political nemesis. And no matter what you think of them, I want you to have soft eyes while you're thinking about them. Can you do it?
I think you can, but is it body position as well? Like,
it's so hard. I mean, you can if you try really, really hard. But I guess the point that I'm making as we do that little object lesson is, when you're dealing with your own child, they are not Donald Trump or Adam Bandt or Pauline Hanson or whoever your most hated political figure is. They are your child, and you love them like crazy. And even though they're being a dead set fair campaign right now, and you've got to get out the door or whatever, or they're not communicating well, you love them like crazy. And if you can regulate yourself and make your eyes soft, you can't go wrong from this point. There's something that happens in our brain from a neurocognitive and a neurobiological perspective that changes everything that happens from here. So step one, regulate yourself. This is not about your child right now. This is about you. Yeah. Step two, make your eyes soft. Step three, do what you said earlier, Vicky. Say what you see. So when my children are having a hard time, and I get this right, and let me be really, really clear about this, I don't always get this right. Every now and again, I just say, you know what, I don't care. Do as you're told. Because sometimes as parents, we have those moments. But when I'm regulated and my eyes are soft, I look at my child and I will say something like this: you're really stressed out about this, aren't you? Okay. Or I'll look at them and I'll say, this feels hard, doesn't it? And they'll just say, yes. Like, they burst into tears. And why do they burst into tears? Just for the same reason you would, Vicky. If you're having that stressful moment, you're in the kitchen and Gus sees you and he says, oh, Vix, it looks like you're having a really tough time here. You can look at him and say, oh, you understand. Now, at no point have I said my child is right, nor has Gus told you that you're right. It's simply a recognition of where they are emotionally. It's kind of like saying, I'm touching your forehead and it feels like you've got a temp. Because we do that very easily when they're sick, but emotionally, when they're not quite where they need to be, this is how we take their emotional temperature. And at that point, as they have a cry, or they say, yes, I'm feeling awful, or they say, no, that's not what it is at all, then we just get to say to them, okay, gotcha. What is it? Or let's explore this. And our job is just to listen to them for a minute. And once we've listened, then we can say, okay, what do you reckon we should do about this then? And we move to problem solving.
So you actually change it and give them a question to help them come up with a solution as well, rather than trying to jump in and fix it straight away, which obviously as parents, again, to your point, we love them and we want them to feel better. So would that be something that you would recommend as well, like as a tool, is bring them into the solution?
Totally, because it gives them that sense of control. So the process that I just developed maybe a decade or so ago now is called the 3 E's of effective discipline. And discipline, we need to get clear on a definition here. Most people think discipline means getting the kids in trouble, punishing them, hurting them, giving them consequences. That's not what discipline is. Discipline means that we teach, or we guide, or we instruct. That is, punishment's about hurting and discipline's about helping. And so the 3 E's of effective discipline are to be used whenever a child needs help. And it might be because they're behaving in challenging ways, or it might be because they're struggling and they're anxious and they're going through a massive transition, or they're about to, and they don't know what to do about it. And they need discipline, meaning they need to know the way that they need to go. They need some guidance, some support, some help. And so the 3 E's of effective discipline go like this. Number one, we need to explore. And that's what that first statement is about. Once you're regulated, once your eyes are soft and you say, it looks like today is hard for you, isn't it? That's the beginning of exploration, because you've given them the chance to tell you what's going on. And as they say, yes, it's been a terrible day, you can say, tell me more. How are you feeling? What is going on inside you? Now, a quick caveat around this: you are a parent, not a therapist, and your children do not need a therapist in this situation. They need a parent. Therapists spend a lot of time going through children's emotions, and they're trained to do it, and they do it really well. Most parents probably don't need to go there. In fact, your kids don't want you to be a therapist. They do want a parent. But by understanding and exploring, it just helps them to balance that part of their emotional brain, which means that they can start to step into their intellectual brain again, their thinking brain. So explore is step one, explain is step two. Explain is something like this. Let's say you've got a year 6 kid, doesn't want to go to high school, or you're moving house at the end of the year, you've got a new job, have to move, new town, new school, new everything. And your child's saying, but I don't want to leave. It's too much. I'm going to miss my friends and all that sort of stuff. So we explore, we say, you're really sad about leaving. This feels like the hardest thing you've ever done, doesn't it? And they say, yeah. And you say, can you tell me what it is that's really bothering you about this? I'm just going to miss my friends so much. So you've got that clear. You say, okay, I got it. And then they explain. You want to do this really quickly because you don't have a lot to talk about here, and they get bored if you talk or they tune out. So they explain something like this. Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if we could stay? So what you're doing is showing a whole lot of empathy. Oh, by the way, when I said, wouldn't it be great if we could stay? Wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to move? What did you hear then, Vicky? There's two things that happen when I give a statement that begins with the words, wouldn't it be great? Or don't you just wish? What are you hearing?
Well, it gives opportunity that there's a connection of a hope in a conversation. It's not saying it's going to happen. It just means you're opening the discussion up to say yes, because then that gives like, it doesn't mean there's going to be a positive out of it, that it's all going to change and you're suddenly all going to stay, but it gives a different spin of something where they can have a positive inflection in what they say. Yes, it would be great if I could stay.
Yeah, so it's just beautiful empathy, right? I mean, that's essentially what you're saying. This is empathy. But there's also something else that's quite clear, and you said that in your answer as well, although I'm not sure if you're aware of how succinctly you said it. There's no positive outcome here. Like, we are moving, right?
Yeah.
Or you are going to the other school. Like, this is happening. So it's drawing a really clear boundary, but it's saying, don't you just wish? Wouldn't it be great? A quick example of this in practical terms to highlight how well this works. I call it giving your kids in fantasy what they can't have in reality. And like, if you're in the shops and the kids say, can I have a lollipop? And you say, oh, don't you just wish that I would say yes every time you asked? And what you've clearly said is no. But you've said it with so much empathy and validation. The kids are like, yeah, I do. When we were looking for a new house a few years ago, I found the most magic home. I think it was at Bronte on the beachfront in Sydney. And, or not on the beachfront, but close by. Lachlan and Sarah Murdoch were selling their Bronte beachfront, had a car elevator, had views for miles. It was just amazing. It was approximately $13 million more than I had. And at the time, it was about 13.5 mil. It was a long time ago. But when I showed Kylie the pictures, Kylie's my wife, when I showed Kylie the pictures, she didn't say, what are you wasting your time for? She didn't say, would you stop being so silly and just concentrate on the stuff that matters? What she did was she looked at the pictures with me, and after she looked at the pictures, she said, wouldn't it be awesome if we could buy a house like that? Like, that's an explanation right there. It's saying, I get where you're coming from. Wouldn't it be so good? And there's something beautiful about the validation and empathy that comes from giving your kids in fantasy what they can't have in reality. And then the third E. Sorry,
I was just going to say, it takes away from constantly, because often when we're busy, we're rushed, and we want to have those moments. If we're constantly saying no, then it's always a block. It's like that brick wall goes, oh, it's a no, it's a no, it's a no. Whereas
I love that.
By saying it like that, it's saying, wouldn't it be lovely if we can have a conversation about it? But unfortunately, we're not going to be able, that can't happen. But it's not a straight no.
It removes the block. I've never thought of it like that, but I love the way you said that. And so we explore where they're coming from, and then we move into explaining by saying, well, don't you just wish? And they say, yes, I do just wish. And you say, yeah, me too. Like, you can agree with that. I wish we didn't have to move you as well. And then the last part of explain is, but as you know, we've got the new house, or we've got the new job, or we've got the new school, and there are some important reasons that we're doing this. And that's it for explain, right? Explain is like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And then you empower. And the empower is the moving to problem solving. So researchers have discovered that if we spend too much time therapizing our kids, I don't even know if therapizing is a word, I just made it up, but if we're doing therapy on our kids and spending time in this emotional, what happens is it actually amplifies it, it blows it up, it makes it bigger. Whereas if we can say, all right, I get where you're coming from, totally get it. Don't you just wish we didn't have to make the change? And then you move to problem solving rather than emotion focused coping. If you move into a problem focused coping strategy, so what do you reckon we can do to make this work? Or what support do you need from me? Or if you were in my situation, how would you deal with what we're dealing with right now? If you were the parent, or if it was your little sister, what would you want me to do? And when we get them to sort of take that shift in perspective and come up with their own solutions, every now and again they'll say, oh, I don't know, and they'll fall on the ground in a heap and cry. And that's because they're still too emotional, they're not quite ready for problem solving, in which case there's a metaphor that I use all the time, and it's such a valuable metaphor, and that is that emotion is like trains that go into tunnels. It's true that sometimes tunnels are long and dark and deep, but the emotion always comes out. The train always comes out the other side. So we've just got to give them time, and we can give them time in really nice, kind, compassionate ways. We say, I know this is really hard, kiddo. Let's talk again in a few minutes when you've calmed down. Give us a hug. And you give them some space. In fact, a question that I ask my kids all the time is this: would it be helpful if I stayed with you and we hugged? Or would you rather it if I just gave you a bit of space and we talk about this later? Because again, what this does is it shifts from emotional brain to thinking brain, and they've got to go, what do I actually want right now? Do I want my dad's comfort and support, or do I just want to be on my own so I can scream into my pillow? So these are all
that as well. It's that I remember years ago my dad saying to me, if you're in confrontation or in a worry or something's happening, actually think of questions. So if someone actually comes at you, if you answer with a question, then that's exactly what you've said there as well. And even with the youngsters, is you've got to think about an answer rather than a yes, no. Like, someone says something and it's a yes, no, then it's finished. Even, please, can you stop doing that? Because, and it's a, well, yes, I can, or no, I won't. But actually what, that's upsetting me. I would like you to stop doing that. Is different ways.
Or even why? I mean, you might say to the kids,
well, yeah, why are you doing that? It's interesting that you're doing that. Why do you think it's okay to do that?
Yeah.
So or if the kids are, I'm conscious that we are
oh, sorry, I'm talking too much, aren't I? Yeah, getting excited.
I just would love, so can you just say the 3 E's again? Just name them. So we just
So we've got to explore, we've got to explain, and we've got to empower. Okay. Explore is getting our head around them. Explaining is here's where we are, and I get why you feel the way you are, but here's where we are. And empower is what do you reckon we should do to make this work? And sometimes that conversation will happen in 10 minutes. Or 2 minutes. You can do it really fast depending on the emotional level of your child. And other times it might take a week or two because you've got to sort of keep on revisiting it and making sure that,
depending on how big that worry or that challenge might be. Is there I remember when we were chatting, when we were getting ready for this, one thing that stuck with me is that we absolutely know that challenges in everyday life, all the ups and downs that we have are there. And with this, we've highlighted some transitions that may occur during this early parts of school, as you say, whether it's moving house, moving school, moving from one year to another year. But what you mentioned was that we've got to be careful as parents not to overdo the transition period and make it a problem when it potentially might not be as well. I'd love you to sort of talk to that a little bit, because I thought that was really interesting, because I think sometimes as parents we may anticipate that it's going to be bigger than it might not be.
Yeah, that's right. We're expecting, maybe we had a transition early in our life where we went from A to B and we just were like, oh my goodness, I'm still traumatized by it today. And we feel like our children are now going to go through this and they're going to carry the scars. Similarly, that long shadow will be cast into their life as it was into ours. And the kids are like, no, it's fine. And we sort of say, but are you sure? But are you sure? And sometimes research shows pretty clearly that emotions are contagious. And so when our children look to us and they see our signals, they will literally respond in kind. We have these things called mirror neurons in our brains. And if our children see anxiety and worry and fear and concern in our eyes, they will take that as an indicator that they should be worried and anxious and fearful and concerned and apprehensive. Saw a video just the other day. A psychology professor is putting some carpet pythons on the floor with some toddlers. So it's like 1-year-olds. And the 1-year-olds just aren't scared of the carpet python. Why? Because the people who are handling the snakes aren't scared of them. And there's no fear, there's no worry, there's no apprehension. The parents have been instructed that they're supposed to smile and look joyful and delighted that their children are crawling around on the floor with these snakes. And the kids have no fear. They look to us for the signals. We can and we will make it a big deal, and our children will internalize that this is a big deal the more we talk about it. So if they're fine, don't make a big deal about it. If you're concerned, a quick check-in. Hey, how are you feeling about that move to the new school? Or how are you feeling about moving into Mrs. So-and-so's class next year? Or how do you feel about being in a class where you don't get to be with your 3 besties next year? Is that all feeling okay for you? And if your child looks at you and says, yep, and they're still eating and they're still sleeping and they're still doing all the stuff that they normally do, this is on you. Like this is a you thing, not a them thing. And it's really important that you take a breather and go, okay, they'll work it out. Vicky, one of my favorite studies of all time is a study that looks at what's known as organismic trust. That is a belief that our kids can work it out. Do we believe that intrinsically they have the resources to adapt to tricky situations? Yeah. And when I look at this, I just think there are hundreds of thousands of kids around the world, millions of kids around the world, hundreds of thousands around Australia, who are going through these precise changes every single day, every single week, every single year, every single whatever. And the overwhelming majority are doing it fine. Now, your child might have some specific needs that put them at risk of not doing it fine, but be guided by them and don't make it bigger than it has to be.
Yeah, I love that. So I suppose to finish it off then, so what would be a key point from you with parents as we're preparing within our family for, let's say, one of the like year 6 to year 7, for example? What advice would you give us as parents as we move into that transition? Or if they're going from, into big school, how do we as parents prepare for that so we don't create some of this worry?
First of all,
how do we regulate ourselves, I suppose? Like, how do
yeah, that's right.
how
Take
do
a few
we
deep
look
breaths.
after our emotional sort of agility in all of this?
Take a few deep breaths. Be guided by your children. Have a look at what's going on in their world and how they're responding. Spend time with your kids. Like, genuinely spend time. No headphones, sitting in the car, side by side, and just chat and ask them where they're up to, and talk about stuff that you do have an agenda about, but also talk about stuff that you don't have an agenda about. Just let the conversation go and see where it goes. I would also encourage food for the chats, because kids open up a lot more when you're feeding them, but also you'll tend to find that your children are going to be better regulated when they're well fed, in the same way that you are better regulated when you are well fed. If you miss a meal, you tend to be a little bit angsty. So I'd be looking at that. And if there are any issues, if there is anxiety, if the transition is looking decidedly dodgy for whatever reason, I'd be reaching out to the school. And there are a handful of things that I recommend in terms of this. Number one, the school year is not over right now. So as a general rule, as the last couple of weeks of school kick off and we move into the very much, this is summer wind down, educators have the capacity at that point, if you come knocking on the door, to do a school tour or to introduce you to key people who will play a role in your child's life, or introduce your child to them, or let the kids get a map of the school and work out where things are. I mean, this sounds like it's overdoing it for many families. It is. But for kids that have got specific anxieties around this, it'll make a huge difference. Something else that I really strongly recommend, and it's tricky in 2024 because of privacy and so on, but something that I've found helpful and have done this a couple of times in my own family is we've reached out to the school and said, we've got a child who's coming to the school. They're going to be in such and such a grade. Would you please pass on our details to the parents of the kids who are going to be in our daughter's class next year, and pass this little email along? We'll send a 3-line email out that says, our daughter is Annie. She's coming into grade 4 next year, or grade whatever next year. We're moving from out of town and she's a bit nervous about making friends. this is my number, this is my email address. Over the school holidays, if you have a spare day or two and you'd be open to meeting in a park and getting the kids an ice cream and introducing them, we feel like that would make a really big difference for our daughter and help her to assimilate nicely into the class. And we've done that a couple of times. Each time we've only had 2 or 3 replies. Like most parents ignore it, don't do a thing about it, they don't care because their kids are settled. And a couple of times, honestly, we've had parents get in touch with us that have been a little bit uncomfortable. That's the reality. But overwhelmingly, in spite of 1 or 2 things that didn't quite work out, it's given our kids the opportunity to get to know a familiar face, to develop a relationship, and to start something that's worked. And each time, in spite of one that was a little bit funny, we also had an overwhelming, we had a sufficient number of responses from people who became, in some cases, lifelong friends. So it's about helping the kids again to build relationships, have a sense of volition. Okay, yeah, I get it. I'm doing it, and these are the reasons why it's going to work, and feel effective in that space.
Yeah, and I love that. And the reason we've joined up, and you being a wonderful supporter of Got You for Life and being on our advisory board and supporting the whole concept of mental fitness, you've just summarized it right there, is showing that vulnerability to reach out to people you don't know. That creates connection, that creates hope, because someone is dealing with emotional adaptability right there and then, because you're worried as parents, but also the child is. You've connected and you've actually been brave to seek the help that might get a rejection. And I think those are the things as parents that and it is hard in this day and age to share details, but I think it's that being brave enough to step outside of the box a little bit and just say, hey, I'd love to connect, because we need to build this little person up ready to go to school. And it doesn't mean that everyone has to jump, but I think it's a great way to sort of round the chat off, because that, to me, the evidence base around those 3 protective factors that we believe build mental fitness, you just shown it right there, to show that vulnerability, to reach out to someone, to ask for their help, so you can connect is just beautiful. So before we sign off, I just wonder if a couple of people have a question that they might want to put in the chat bar. We have got a bit of time that we can do that. So if anyone has a question that they would like to ask Dr. Justin, fire away now. We'll see if any come up. Is there anything else that, obviously the whole concept of transition, the whole concept of, it is everyday life. And I love the way that you say that, the fact that every day you're going to deal with things that are changing, that loss and change is sort of related to new things that are going to happen and how you're going to feel. Is there anything else that you would love to sort of summarize before we do go today?
Yeah, I reckon if there was just one more thing that stands out to me, Vicky, it would be that while there are so many things that change in our children's lives, consistently, there's never-ending change for them. Research shows really, really clearly that for kids to thrive, they need one thing in particular, and that is consistency in caregiving. They need to have one person, minimum one person in their life who is just dead set, fair income crazy about them. And ideally, that's going to be you as a parent. You will see, in a perfect world, you'll see your child in a way that nobody else will, and you will absolutely love them. That doesn't mean that you're going to get in the way of their development. That doesn't mean that you're going to stand up for them when they've clearly done the wrong thing. I mean, you still need to teach them character and principles and values and things. But when kids know that regardless of anything that happens, we've got them. I'm here for you. I've got you. I'll catch you. My 3 favorite words, the 3 words that I think every parent needs to emblazon into their children's mind, are not the 3 words that everyone thinks it's supposed to be. Everyone thinks that the most important words your child can hear are, I love you. And it's not. Bizarrely. It's the 3 words that come next. And that is, no matter what. So when your kids are having a meltdown, when your kids are losing, when the kids are saying, I hate you, I don't want to go to that new school, I don't want to leave my friends, I don't want to move to the new house, I don't want this, I don't want that. When they're doing that, our real job, more than anything, is to recognize that this relationship between parent and child is forever going to be unfair. You are forever, maybe not forever, but certainly for the first 20, 30 years of their life, you are going to do the bulk of the ironing, the washing, the cleaning of the dishes, the preparing of the meals, the drop-offs of the pickups, the spending the money. That it is a profoundly unfair relationship, and that is how it is designed, because that's how we teach them who they are. And we teach them who they are by teaching them how much we love them. We love them no matter what. So when they're losing it about the new school or the new grade or the new whatever, that's where we say, I know you're upset. I get it. Tough day. Nothing seems fair. No matter how upset you are, you need to know I love you. I love you no matter what. My love for you is bigger than your tantrum. My love for you is bigger than the slammed door. My love for you is bigger than the insult you just hurled at me or your sister or your dad or whoever. My love for you is bigger than all that stuff. I love you no matter what. We are going to have a talk a little bit later about boundaries and rules again, because we're having some hard times right now.
Yeah.
But I love you no matter what. And when they get that message, when they get that message, that's how they learn to transition. Can I share a really quick personal story on this one to sort of conclude? When I was leaving university as a lecturer and starting a business, I had no idea how to run a business. I had a PhD in psychology. I had no idea what that meant. So I'm in my mid-30s. I've got 5 kids. I've got a mortgage. We have 6 kids, of course, but we hadn't had the last one by then. I gave my dad a call. And I rang Dad because I know that he's a no matter what kind of guy. Like my mum is a hope and optimism and possibility person, and you can do whatever you set your mind to kind of person. But I needed a no matter what conversation. I rang my dad and I said, Dad, I'm about to leave university life. I'm going to start a business. I have no idea what I'm doing. I've got enough funds to potentially pay the mortgage, the food, the fuel, and the electricity, keep the lights on for maybe 6 months. But I don't know what I'm going to do or how I'm going to do it. And I'm ringing you, Dad, because if this all falls in a heap and if I am unsuccessful, I just wanted to ask whether or not Kylie and I can move the kids into your garage and live there for a few months while we get back on our feet and work out what we're going to do. And his response, well, he didn't say the words no matter what. His response encapsulated, Justin, as you go through this transition, I've got you no matter what. If that's what happens, the garage is yours. In fact, you won't be in the garage. You can come and live in the house and we'll work something out.
Yeah.
He basically said to me, no matter what happens, I'm here for you. And that was what gave me the courage to make the transition, to go from being a full-time employee at the university to being a self-employed speaker. I mean, I wasn't even a speaker because no one was hiring me to speak. I was a self-employed nothing at that point.
Yeah.
And that's what our kids need. They need to know, no matter what happens, no matter how badly this goes, no matter how well this goes, no matter what, I'm here for you. We'll work it out. I've got you.
Yeah. And that, that's the essence of, I suppose, that gotcha for life mate type
Gotcha
of
for life.
It's like gotcha for life, warts and all, you've got someone that's got your back. And I know for me, having 3 older children and the beautiful recap I get now when they call, Jack called me this morning, all of that hard work and similar, and I'm like you, we certainly didn't get it right every single time, but knowing that, having those difficult conversations, sometimes letting them know when they ask, did I play that game? Was I great today, Mum? Well, you've asked the question, I'm going to give you an honest answer, and it's not the best I've, seen you play. It's like, Mum, that's not very nice. It's like, well, that was the question and you got the fair answer. And having kids that are older, if anything that you get from today, I think if you put it into practice, I think you'll come back and you'll absolutely reap the benefits. And I think beautiful way to finish off this wonderful opportunity of having you share your evening of conversation with us, Dr. Justin, because it is difficult and we want to try to get it right. And we don't always have the answers, but I think the way you've simplified it, the fact that we shouldn't make a big deal of everything and we just hold space for our youngsters, just like we would an adult. I've loved how you've related it to how I would be with Gus. It's actually, well, what you do as an adult is just the same. We shouldn't underestimate our youngsters, that actually they can cope with a lot more than we think they can. And asking them questions, letting them be heard, I think is so valuable. And I know for me, at times my kids absolutely shouted that they hated me and I was the meanest mum ever. You know, being coach and manager for some of their teams, it was just like, I hate that you're my manager, and now oh, Mum, I love that you are my manager. So
Yes.
look, no questions, because we've obviously answered everything that everyone needed to know. To everyone out there this evening, this is the first webinar that we've done, and we have been hugely honoured to have Dr. Justin. As I say, he's on our advisory board. We feel so honoured and proud to have him as part of our team, and to share your evening when you have got 6 children is so precious. So thank you to everyone as well for joining us. I hope you have taken something away from today, and that you feel a little bit more empowered to yourselves to navigate whatever is going on for you and your little people in your world. And I think making sure that we've got their backs is a great message. So on behalf of myself and the whole Gotcha for Life team, Dr. Justin, thank you. And for all the parents out there, thank you for joining us. We'll call it a night. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Night.